Okay. So this will be the first time we have the proverbial, as my father would say, chicken in the hen house. So starting off, this is going to be episode one of what we're going to call on Running Through the Jungle Network as Strange Love. Those of you who listen to me a lot know that I've got that mantra that you can't play the game with just one team. It takes two teams to play the game we love in the NFL football. So we do have John SUCHAN from the Fanatical ELFZ Network, ELFZ with a Z, representing the Cleveland Browns here. Welcome,
Hello.
John.
Hello. Thank you for having us, or me.
Yeah. Well, you're representing the
As I
entire group.
represent all of Dog Pound and the Fanatical
Yeah.
Elves.
Yeah. For those of you watching on YouTube, I will move John out of this box and not make that Bengals logo sit by his elf on his hat the entire time. But we also have my co-host, Justin Lacey. Justin, how you been?
Doing pretty good, man. Week one of the regular season is here. We've been talking about too much preseason, and I'm gotten kind of tired of it. And if for more Bengals fans, for that matter, it's just been a nauseating conversation about Joe Burrow's contract extension, and it's like, look, can we just talk about regular football now for once? And I'm glad that we finally made it.
That's right. That's right. So let's get into it. Start the show. All right, John. First time seeing the intro. What do you think?
That was, that surprised me how well that was put together by some Bengals fans. So
That was actually put together by a Cowboys fan. That's our
Ah.
boy Mod over at the Know-It-Alls. He Christian hip hop artist.
Yes.
He does Spin the Block was his newest album, and he did the intro music and put that together for us. He did a really good job.
He did an excellent job.
I always joke with him. He does a great job, great work, and he's a good guy for a Cowboys fan. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
You can unite a lot of people if you talk bad about the Cowboys or if you talk bad about the Baltimore Ravens. So
we love some Ravens hate.
We always got that. Well, we got some stuff to get into here. We're getting into the season, week one. We've got at least 18 more weeks, and then maybe some bonus football for our teams coming down the pipe here. So we'll get right into it. John, why have the Browns had Burrow's number since he joined the league? He finally got him last year one time, and that was, I really think, because we outrushed you by almost about 70 yards that game.
Mm-hmm.
But is it just the big uglies in the middle? Is there's some secret sauce we got going on over there, John?
Well, I think it's a variety of things, and for whatever reason, your guess is as good as mine. I think you've mentioned a few things already. I mean, Myles Garrett has done pretty well traditionally over him. I was looking at some stats before he came on the air.
Bad. He's not bad.
No, I mean 18. He's Browns have gotten 18 sacks on Burrow in those games. 10 interceptions. The 18 is the most of any other team in the league. Pittsburgh I think he's thrown more interceptions to the Steelers and the Browns, but the Browns have 10 picks on him.
Well, he had that game one with the Steelers last year coming off the appendectomy where he had five picks in one game, I think it was, Justin?
Yeah, that didn't help.
Four interceptions,
four picks and a fumble, yeah.
One of the guys that came back, it's reporting today that Denzel Ward, or cornerback, real pricey contract there, and he's still in concussion protocol, but he came back on the practice field today, part of the protocol. All signs are suggesting that he'll be ready to play, Sunday, but he's been out since like the 25th, 26th of August. There was chatterbugs the other day talking about him maybe even retiring, but Denzel Ward's another guy that, 2 years ago in that game against Burrow that, Cincinnati looked like they were going to go right down there, and Denzel picked the ball, went up back 99 yards, and that kind of set the tone in that game. So there's a lot of guys on D. I think Joe is an excellent quarterback, and he's had a lot of success against most of the league. And for whatever reason, I think the Browns, like we've mentioned, have had a few good plays here and there that have given that opportunity. I think last year too, I think it was the Halloween game.
Yeah.
Was that last year or 2 years? Yeah, I think it was
last year. I was in full garb, sitting in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Sitting out, handing out candy with a big screen on the game.
Yeah.
Crying in my beer. That's what
I think doing. Now that he's got that win, but the other factor for us, the Browns fans, is now that we've got DeShaun Watson potentially at full force. So it'll be a good test for both teams. I mean, I think our teams, all the teams in the league are playing all the teams in the rest of the league. The Browns play all three teams in the before week 5 or week 4. They go on their bye in week 5 for the Brownies. So it'll be a really good test. But I think both teams are hyped. Joe's coming off. I'm anxious to hear from you guys what you like with Joe coming off this calf injury. I mean, it sounds like he's a go. But
so that's what it points to. But I really would say, I think we all as Bengals fans immediately point to the offensive line as keys to the game, or why you've had our number. But Justin, do you have another take on that, or do you think it's just big uglies?
No, it's not just the big uglies. It's a little bit more than that. Let's just start off with this. The reason why the Browns have Joe Burrow's number is, let's just start off from his rookie season up until now. I'll go ahead and count all the games. So week 2 of 2020, Joe Burrow was dealing with a bereft roster of talent, and yet he had to throw the ball 61 times without a running game and a depleted defense. No pass rush, I think led by Carlos Dunlap, who was playing past his prime. No Geno Atkins. DJ Reader, I believe, also got hurt. CJ Uzomah was the one that caught his first touchdown pass that day. Also left the game with an Achilles tear, out for the year. AJ Green was a shell of his former self, and yet he still threw the ball 61 times for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, and almost pulled off a comeback win in Cleveland that night, even though with Baker Mayfield playing one of his better games. But
yes,
there was also the dominating force that sort of catapulted until.
So that was game 1. That was his first game against the Brownies. That
was the first game 2 of Burrow's career.
That was a Thursday. Now that was a Thursday night game. Was that the Thursday? Yeah, and that's
a Thursday night game.
So for the Browns, that was really a shocker too, because if you the week before the Browns got pancaked by Baltimore.
Ravens,
and then
Baltimore was. I attribute it to Baltimore has always sort of had the number of Cleveland because of Lamar Jackson factor. However you want to sort of plug that up there, but Baker Mayfield was the one that sort of always got his rocks off against the Bengals, and everybody always attributed to that being the Baker Mayfield turning into Bernie Kosar every time he plays the Bengals, and that being one of the first examples of it, even when we had rookie Joe Burrow coming into his own in a game 2 short week at that night. And again, still damn near put up a fight and almost won the game, but at the end of the day, the Browns had the more talent. They had Myles Garrett. I believe he did a strip sack fumble that went for a 1-yard score. Then the second game in Cincinnati, that was actually one of my favorite games of that season. It was a loss, but both Mayfield and Burrow was just back and forth. Like they were trading leads, trading punches, and Baker Mayfield throwing 22 consecutive passes, threw for 5 touchdowns. Burrow, on the other hand, threw for over 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, and ran for a score. But again, what did the Bengals in was they had no pass rush, they had no defense, they had no good corners, and then Baker, who threw his final that touchdown pass to I believe it was to Donovan Peoples-Jones in the back right corner, with Darius Phillips on them. And that was the second win, and we didn't play. And that was both of those games were like 5 weeks apart. So it was during the early state of the season in 2020. In 2021, the only real obvious game that really sticks out was midseason when you guys came to Cincinnati and you kind of just stomped us. That's just call it what it is. That was the game that I felt, okay, the Browns secondary has the answer to what we've built up at that time with our trio with rookie Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. We call them the Migos. You guys have developed a nice little trio of corners that can match up on an island with our three receivers.
Yeah.
The bigger surprise for me that day was I saw Greg Newsome become his own that day. He was on an island with Jamar Chase. And also Jamar Chase was dealing with a lot of drops. T. Higgins did a lot of drops that day. But to your point, Denzel Ward, the Bengals is going right, moving down the field in the goal line territory, and then a bad throw to Jamar on the out route. Denzel Ward snags it and picks it off. Myles Garrett's having a wrecking ball a day like his own normal self. And that's kind of what did the third win in a row. The second game of that season, we were resting starters, so we didn't care. The Halloween, that brings us to now the Halloween game. And that one I cannot explain to this day. I always attribute it to that seemed like that was just like the curse of Halloween because it just weird stuff happens on Halloween. And while I don't want to just attribute that as the excuse, at the end of the day, the Bengals had a bad game plan from the start. And they were looking like they were going to move the ball until Myles Garrett put his hands up in the air, that big mitten paw that he has, tipped the ball, intercepted it, and there goes the momentum. And that ultimately, just spiraled out of control. They got put in uncomfortable situations. They kept trying to force throw the ball instead of running the ball, and it just kind of steamrolled out of control. And that was Jacoby Brissett starting. So at that point, it ain't had nothing to do with Baker Mayfield because he's already gone. And then the final game where Burrow finally gets his win, that one made me finally look at it and think like, okay, the Browns still on paper matches up very well against the Bengals. But it seems to me that Burrow finally got that monkey off his back. He had a pretty convincing win. DeShaun Watson did not play very well at all. No. But at the same time, he got better after that, just a tad bit better after that. And, the Browns ended up going 3-3 down the stretch to end the last season. So this is going to be a very intriguing matchup, but it definitely goes a lot more to just the big uglies, as what you just alluded to, B-Dirt. Myles Garrett is a wrecking ball. We know that. He's a one of one. But let's not act like last year that the Browns had a great run defense, because they didn't. They had a lot of holes up front, up there, and they couldn't stop the run. But they had Myles Garrett. Jadeveon Clowney was just a no-show for the most of the period of time. So they had a lot of different storylines themselves, and they really had a co-depend on being good rushing on the ground. They had inconsistencies with DeShaun Watson coming back at quarterback. So it felt like that last year, the Browns fans kind of was punting on last season without really punting on last season, still giving it their best shot. But they go in there feeling pretty damn confident that they can actually do some stuff and get it done. It is going to be a good game. I think it is going to be a nice little test between the two. But that's my overall synopsis when I look at these two matchups.
Did you build a film room at your house since last week?
See,
man, I feel like I just ran through all of the past 4 years. That was wild.
I tell you this. I've done it with Pittsburgh for many years. When a team starts to get in your number, they start to get in your head as a fan a little bit, that you got to start thinking about keeping up with these things. I've done it with Pittsburgh. When all those years when we were losing them, we lost 11 straight. And yeah, you heard that right. 11 straight during the Dalton era. And it just felt like it was no fight.
Yeah.
I was able to date stats going all the way back to the last time we won, even before then. And still the fans can't believe it. But I also do that just to draw a timeline in the picture and see, like, when did this actually become a pattern? With the Browns, I truly feel like that it was just caught in the Bengals in the wind of, hey, they had already a pretty complete roster of guys. They always had the talent, whereas the Bengals were rebuilding with Joe Burrow. However, when we were making our run in 2021 and lost that game mid-season, that spoke a little bit more volumes to people, because it felt like that it was a combination of the offense having a bad day and Baker Mayfield being his usual self against the Bengals, just uncharacteristically. But at the end of the day, it's like there's something there that Cleveland has that is an answer to what Cincinnati has built. And we'll see if that holds more candles to the flame as we go into this week one. But make no mistake about it, it's not just some usual ruse now. But also on the Bengals avenue, we got to see if did Burrow really finally figure it out, or is this going to be a continuation of this is just probably going to be a team he's going to struggle against? I tend to think the former, other than the latter, but that's just me as a Bengals fan thinking that way.
All right. So, not just the big uglies, but they're definitely a question. I would go back to this. I would say that third down back chipping on Garrett and helping out in the blocking scheme is going to be also playing big on top of how our offensive line does for the first game. So, John, you touched on Ward, Denzel Ward. Fourth concussion, obviously pretty scary. And again, Strange Love being the name of the show. Like I don't wish ill will towards anybody. I think everybody wants to see the man have a full recovery, and I'd love to see him have a great career. I mean, he's a hell of a player.
Great player.
Besides him, how are you doing health wise going into this weekend?
I think everyone's doing. I think today they had everybody on. There was nobody on the injury report, or as far as everybody was out on the field. We've got players like Marquise Goodwin, the veteran that the Browns picked up. That was the big issue this training camp with. They discovered some blood clotting in his leg and another area of his body, and then so he was out. But then they got him back right before that 53-man roster was announced a week or so ago, and then Browns have made some adjustments and cut some guys, brought some guys back in. But injury is looking. I mean, we're healthy. They've rested Miles, they've rested Nick Chubb all the way coming into this game. DeShaun played a little bit in preseason, but Denzel, I agree. I mean, four concussions. Who knows how many more have gone unannounced, and even going back to Ohio State days. I mean, he's done some really great things for this team. I'm probably more critical than some when talking about Denzel as far as, how good he really been. He's made the Pro Bowl twice. And he's had some great moments. I mean, that game against Lee we already referred to, that 99-yard run back was amazing, and it really changed the complexion of that game. He's been out 17, I think I counted earlier, 17 games over the 5 seasons. He's never made it more than 12 or 13 games in a regular season. He's, between him, I mean, Greg Newsome's has had a concussion or two. There's some other guys there. Martin Emerson is a really nice guy that they picked up last year in the draft out of Mississippi State. Love this kid. He's going to be coming into his second year. Had a really great rookie season. I expect really good things from him. Health, there's other guys that they've brought in too in that secondary. Juan Thornhill from the Chiefs, big pickup. Pickup. McLeod, Rodney McLeod, the kid from Philly. They've brought him in. And so these are a couple of veterans who've been, to the Super Bowl, and they have some real good experience. And I think the Browns are healthy and ready to go on that side of the ball. We haven't talked yet about Jim Schwartz, but the Browns have a new defensive coordinator. And that's hopefully going to help that run defense that we're talking about, along with bringing in Delvin Tomlinson, Shelby Harris, some of these other guys.
Schwartz definitely likes to get after the quarterback too.
Yeah, and it's really freed up the player. I mean, that's what we talk a lot about on our shows on the Fanatical Elves, that it's this new kind of concept for the team. All these players, from Myles Garrett to everybody, Zadarius Smith, are all talking about how they've never been given this freedom to attack, read what they're going up against, and really drawn to the ball. And it's a very very free kind of form of football. And so I'm anxious to see how it all works out. I think Myles is probably happy that Zadarius Smith is there, and you've got Ogba. I don't know how to say his first name. I call him Obi-Wan, but he's the other guy that they picked up from the Texans.
The Texans,
Yeah, so
Rockwell, I think that's his name. I can't. Yeah, it's one of those complicated names.
But
that one was actually my favorite pickup, by the way. More so than the Zadarius Smith one.
Yeah,
I think
it was the first
Smith
one.
Yeah, I think Zadarius Smith was a pretty solid pickup, obviously late during that free agency period. That's a guy that feels like that he can try to put together one of his next best season for another big payday or
Right.
whatnot. But Orakwo, if I got his name correctly, is the one
Yeah.
that was a sneaky good pickup that really I felt like can sort of be the second gear next to Myles Garrett.
Absolutely. They got a couple of young guys like Alex Wright, who had been injured, rookie kid that I'm not sure when we'll see him in the season, but they picked him up from was it UAB last year? He should see some good moments in time, but yeah, I expect Myles to have a really good year. I think everybody's expecting good things from him, getting the help that he's getting. We'll see how it all pans out starting on Sunday.
Nice.
I got a question. Can you talk to me about your linebackers, more specifically
Yeah,
with JOK? Because
yeah,
here's what I always tend to hear coming out of Browns Nation, and they speak glowingly about JOK. I personally was a
okay,
fan of him coming out of the draft.
sure,
I thought you guys got a steal when he should have
yeah,
gone in the first round, and he's a really good rangy sideline to sideline. But it
yeah,
also feels like that his production sort of haven't matched what people had expected coming out as well.
yeah. He seems pretty fired. I mean, it's just been preseason, and the guys have been given a couple rounds here when they've played a couple times. But JOK's, he's been everywhere in preseason on some of the early moments of these games. Yeah, no, he's super quick. The linebacker crew there, we've got Anthony Walker, and then Taki in there, and JOK, and then they've picked up another couple guys that are younger that are coming in from the draft. I think they're we'll see how the defense goes, because from what I understand with this Jim Schwartz defense, that they should have more. I mean, with everybody attacking the ball, they're not waiting. I think they can be more aggressive. Um, so I expect to see JOK flying all over the place. He's a hard nosed. He likes to tackle, and I mean there. So yeah, he's not super big. He's not one of these guys that's.
But he puts his nose in there.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's what I think they're trying to find with this linebacker group with the Browns. These lanky, sort of longer
Sideline to sideline, can jump
yeah,
in coverage.
and can stay up with you guys. We need speed. I mean, I think that's been one of the things we've talked about in the preseason, and watching what we're seeing so far. We haven't seen the starters a lot, but just in general, it seems like the Browns on the defensive side of the ball are moving. I mean, they're quicker. They're not, they're being more aggressive, and that can pay off, and it might backfire. But I certainly don't think that the Browns are going to be. I think we'll blown some coverages. But I mean, think about it. If you guys don't watch the Browns games all the time like we do, but last year it was just a mess. I mean, defensive coordinator Joe Woods was, just the communication amongst the backside of the defense. It just seemed that they were getting burned on multiple plays. There were big losses early on in that season, and the Browns were up 2 touchdowns against the Jets with 2 minutes to play in week 2, and they blow that game. And there's no reason they should never have lost that game. So yeah.
Well, to touch on our health issues a little bit from the Bengals side of things, and John, I know you don't tune in to us on a weekly basis, but I'm gonna skip by Joseph Ossai because it'll get Justin's heart rate up and blood pressure going. Because there's the one guy that we played too much in the preseason. We didn't play anybody in the preseason. None of our starters, none of our guys that are going to get serious time. But for whatever reason, he played until the very end and ended up with a high ankle sprain. So they got him listed as doubtful. He ain't playing. But that's it. When you look at it's one of the only first and second stringers. Now we do have the Joe Burrow calf strain, which seems to be knock on wood. I think they've addressed it correctly. And
someone down here, Brandon, here in Columbus. I'm down in Columbus, and they were talking about Joe and the two scenarios. Should you play him in week 1, or should you give him an extra week? You're in for a long season. Would it be better off just to not bring him in that first game?
I mean, he's going full out at practice.
Okay.
And they're going full out in pads now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we'll know after Thursday's practice
Mm.
if there's any injury, if there's any twinge or tightness, we'll know. But I get what you're saying, especially with our history of getting sacked so much from the Browns. But I mean, good luck keeping him off.
Who was the quarterback? The guy that got injured years ago before Joe. You guys were such a great team. You had playoff
Carson
run.
Palmer.
Carson
No,
Palmer.
that was Andy.
No.
He's talking about Andy Dalton in 2015. Who a great team, started off 8-0, went 10-2. Dalton, he breaks his thumb, trying to tackle a Steelers player, misses the rest of the season.
Uh-huh.
I don't even think he
Okay.
breaks them. He just injures his thumb. But
When
yeah, the
was the
Carson
Car-
Palmer one
Yeah,
is the
when
one.
was that?
That was in the playoffs.
That was 05.
Yeah, he threw
That was in 05.
threw a bomb
Yeah, that was
to
2005.
threw a bomb to Chris Henry and got hit by
Because they had a pretty good team that year, right?
Timo von Oelhoffen.
Yeah,
What was their?
yeah.
They went into that playoffs pretty highly.
Yes, and this has
seeded.
actually been one of Justin Lacey's big takes on it. He said that that's not the year that we had a chance to win the Super Bowl, and that's a whole nother path. Again, on this show, if we get him started down that path, me and you are gonna have to take a nap, come back. He'll get into it. He
Very
knows he knows when a clip of grass went up in the air. He's got that game down.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Chido Awuzie is the one, he got injured last year at Halloween in Cleveland. He's going back to the scene of the crime, and he's coming back off of, an ACL tear. Any concerns there, Justin, or are you good on that one?
I think that Chido is ready to rock and roll. He took a lot of precautionary steps for the right reasons, of course. No need to risk any sort of injury during the preseason. He's ramped it up during the later periods of training camp, getting into some 11-on-11s and 7-on-7s. He even said that he's back and ready to go. So I anticipate no drop off with him. The only thing that I do want to watch and look for as we progress throughout his season is if his volume production is going to be as much as it was before he got hurt. Because contrary to what people might believe when it comes to the corners in the AFC North, and this is not me trying to sound like a homer, but Chido was the one that was playing at like he was the best corner in the division. It wasn't Marlon Humphrey. Denzel Ward, as you mentioned, was in and out with injuries, concussions, and whatnot, which definitely want to ensure that his health is primarily the top focus. But as you also said, John, like Joe Woods didn't really put him in the best situation defensively wise, where they were always getting kind of brought into busted coverage. Chido was the one guy that really made the defense, more specifically the secondary, stronger. He played great. He locked down other teams' ones and twos, and it is such a far cry of what we wanted. What we originally thought we were going to get from him when we initially signed him.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to be that he has become better than expected. That probably after this year, we're probably going to have to ask ourselves, can we afford to even keep him if he goes on another high-level type playing for this season? But in terms of his production and injury status, he's ready to go.
Yeah, and if you want to know what we think the odds of us re-signing Chido, you could check out the Running Through the Jungle podcast, and we actually are going to dive into that on that podcast. So something to look forward to.
I see you put me back next to the.
We're going to move you around a little bit, John. We don't want you to get too comfortable.
I feel like I'm on a circus ride here. Okay.
That's right. We like to move it around a little bit, keep the show on its toes. But we're going to get into the expectations for DeShaun Watson next, but we're going to take a quick break here to pay some bills. Give me be back here in just a moment. All right, welcome back. For those of you on YouTube, thanks for the quick break. The rest of you, thanks for paying the bills, keeping the lights on. If you're on YouTube, you know mine cut out at the beginning of the show, so that's kind of funny. Let's jump into DeShaun Watson. Only played 6 games, I think, last year, and looked a little rusty. But he's pumping his chest out there. He said you're gonna have some fireworks, and I don't know. What do you expect out of him, John? What's a good day for Deshaun Watson look like for
Well,
you?
I wrote an article this last week for Dog Pound Daily, which is part of the Fan-Sided group, and it was the title of the article was three keys to the Browns having a successful season. And I started the article off by saying that it's not Deshaun Watson, it's not Nick Chubb, just for these reasons. Deshaun, but if you're looking for him to have a statistically great season, that's great. We want that in Cleveland. We'd love for him to have a great season. But if you looked at, Deshaun's past, his best season was in Houston, where he broke all those records, but his team sucked. Team finished with a 4-12 record.
A lot of running out of the pocket and
sacked a bazillion times. So, yeah, I think, speaking of Nick Chubb, we'll get back to Deshaun, but Nick Chubb, I mean, he's been very consistent, just an amazing running back, and is setting all sorts of, could be a future Hall of Famer potentially if Browns have got to do some work and get to the playoffs. And anyway, Deshaun, I mean, I think you're right. There's a lot of expectations, a lot of fans that are just over the moon again, but I'm again one of these guys, like when I talked about Denzel, I'm hesitant. Deshaun's been in the league for a while. He's been out of the league for a long time. He's come back. Everyone talks about how he looked rusty. I don't expect him to be throwing I still think that he's going to. I don't expect him to look like just the best quarterback in the league. I think he will still. Mm-hmm. I think he certainly looked better in this preseason a little bit. Folks are very excited about parts of that and thinking that the Browns have all these offensive weapons, and they got Nick Chubb in the background. They got Amari, Donovan Peoples-Jones. They've got the new kid, Elijah Moore. Everyone's over the moon here in Cleveland about Elijah Moore. And I think he could really do some great things, but he's going into his third season. He struggled in New York for a variety of reasons. So yeah, I'm thinking, Deshaun's going to have it. I mean, overall, I expect him to do much better than he has in recent time. It's a very important part to what the Browns do. I don't know if it's the key. He could be successful, and the Browns could still tumble for a variety of other reasons, which I spoke of in this article I wrote. So I'm expecting some good things on Sunday. Mm-hmm. But the first time he throws an interception, or the first time something negative happens, you have a lot of, you have half the Cleveland fan base here in Cleveland that's still very upset. I mean, they won't follow the team. There are people that I know, family and friends, that don't have season tickets now because of what the Browns did. So that's the other part of this too, that you've already lost some fans because of this situation. So there's a lot of pressure on the kid, and despite him having this off season and looking like he's shaking off the rust, I don't expect to see outstanding play yet. Now I'm hoping, he builds into that, and by halfway through the season, and I mean, obviously you want Deshaun playing better toward the latter part of the season. I mean, it's important to get wins. But I'm not super over, like when I'm going to go watch the game on Sunday, I'm not expecting to see him throw for 450 yards, and he doesn't need to, first off, in the Browns offense, but when you got Nick Chubb back there, and you got, so.
Yep. And you guys have ran the ball historically well against us.
Yes. Nick Chubb has had some of his best games against you guys. So.
Yep. Deshaun Watson, just to put you on a spot here, DraftKings over under 228.5 yards passing and 1.5 touchdowns.
Okay.
You expect those to be over? Or you think they're pretty close?
Yeah, I think over. Okay, so I could see him do, closer to 3, maybe 275. I think at least 2 touchdowns. You said 1.5 touchdowns?
1.5, yeah.
Yeah, I'd give him at least 2. Yeah, for sure. I mean, you got David Njoku there. You got all the tight ends. You've got, Harrison Bryant, who never plays, but somehow, can, be around the ball. You got Nick Chubb, who could grab a screen and take it, I expect both teams to be putting up some points Sunday. Now, how many, I'm still thinking about that before I give you my prediction.
Justin, what do you think about DeShaun Watson? What do you think his day looks like?
It's going to be pretty interesting because we still don't know what the full identity of the Cleveland Browns offense is going to entail. On one hand, they've been very productive with running the ball with Nick Chubb, and there are other plethora of guys. I know Kareem Hunt's not there anymore. I know we got Demetric Felton from you guys on the practice squad, but Dearness Johnson, I believe, is still there. Yeah,
No,
I think Dearness Johnson is still there, if I'm not mistaken.
He went to Jacksonville.
Oh, he's in Jacksonville now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, the name that matters the most is Nick Chubb. Everybody knows that. But they've had a lot of success running the ball. They've always historically had a better offensive line than most teams have. With Bill Callahan, father of Brian Callahan, our offensive coordinator, leading the pack with that offensive line coach. But then on the other hand, you got DeShaun Watson that, I called him the modern day Randall Cunningham when he was doing his time with the Houston Texans. If you ever wanted to see what Randall Cunningham would have looked like in today's game, well, look no further than DeShaun Watson with the Houston Texans. It was always like these magician-like plays that he will make, like inside or out of the pocket, and you don't know how he gets out of it, and somehow throws a touchdown pass, when it comes to it. But they're going to have to figure out what their identity is, and it may take a few weeks just to be able to find it. There's a lot of raw talent with DeShaun Watson in general, based off of what he was before. But I caution most Browns fans because most of them, and this is social media Browns fans, which I'm hoping that is not the same as the brigade that is talking like how you are, John, that they come with this assumption that he is going to be immediately better than he was before. Maybe he may be better than what he was last year, but does that ultimately entail that he's going to be what he was in 2020 when he last played football? I mean,
it's a long time ago.
And it was a long time ago. And even then, he threw up his best numbers on a terrible team. And I felt bad for him too, but also at the same sense is like, were you really the reason that you won those games or anything like that? I think that he did everything he could to put the team on his shoulders, and he lost to the Cleveland Browns that year, 10-7. I remember that. So there's a lot of mystery with DeShaun Watson. Do I think he's ultimately going to get himself back into the top 5 conversation? Probably not. I don't think so. Top 10, yes, but he has to be able to show that he can gel along with what the Browns have already built with Kevin Stefanski, because their bread and butter has usually been rushing the ball with Nick Chubb, and they've done that really well, especially like y'all just said against us. So that's where my expectation on Deshaun Watson is. Yeah, I'm going to assume that you're going to want to throw the ball a lot, but understand the strength of your team before they.
Well, that's where the arguments are had here, Justin, here in Cleveland amongst the fan base, because you have that, and even the analysts like myself and other guys that follow the team, because there is this thing where we have Nick Chubb, and then you're talking about Coach Stefanski, and then it's this balancing act. And if you do it one way, then you have certain fans that are upset. You do it the other way, you get the other fans that are pissed off with either the coach or. So I don't think that's
John.
Winning
playoff wins. Cures it instantly.
Well, what really I think and I've talked about Kevin Stefanski. One of my colleagues, Doug Pontielli, wrote an article about Stefanski. I've written a lot about Stefanski over the years, and his take in his latest article was that Stefanski's not on the hot seat. His seat's not even warm. And while I think that long-term for an organization like the Browns, you want to, get a head coach and keep him there, like some of these other teams that have shown more success. But if this team struggles at all again, that first 4 game stretch before their bye, they're all winnable games, but they're all losable games too.
Yeah.
This team's sitting at 0-4 in this town, going into a bye, and then they have to play the 49ers in week 6. I mean, I told, the guy's take was that the seat's not even warm. And I'm like, I can't agree with that. You can't,
You never know. Yeah.
yeah. And
It doesn't take long in the NFL.
no. And I think Kevin Stefanski's done a good job, and he's had his moments. They got to the playoffs in 2020. And that's sort of been like that's where they got. Obviously it was a pandemic year. There's a lot of different things about that season that might have had an effect on that. But the last 2 seasons, the Browns are sub 500, 7-10 last year, not 8-9 the year before.
So speaking of records, I'm going to put you on the spot here, John. I'm going to start with you. I'm going to give you each team in the AFC North, what the DraftKings over under for season wins are. We're going to finish with your beloved Browns, and then you can give me a little more insight on why you pick what you pick with the Browns. But
Okay.
just the over under on the first one. We'll start off. We'll go in order here. We'll start off 8.5 wins for the Pittsburgh Steelers. What are your thoughts?
Mine,
Yep.
over. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
10.5 wins for the Baltimore Ravens.
Under.
Ooh,
Why?
spicy.
Yeah, because I have some Raven hate. No,
Okay. I like it.
I do. I just, we in Cleveland at the Fanatical Elves, we've been talking about the Ravens. What the hell are they doing this offseason? And, they can bring in all these former first round wide receivers. But since Ozzie Newsome left, and it just seems like, what the hell are they doing? And, the guy that our show, What the Elf is that with Joel, he says, what the elf with the Ravens. So,
yeah.
Cleveland's played well against the Ravens traditionally last couple of years. They've split with them. I don't think Browns fans I don't think the team is. I don't think anybody in the league is scared of the Ravens. Now, Lamar has been injured and some different things. One of the highlights back in 2020 or 20, it was the pandemic year, the Christmas game. Do you guys remember when the Ravens came to Cleveland on Monday Night Football in late December?
That was a great game.
And Lamar, I was there, and Lamar, got sick to his stomach, and you weren't sure, and then he came back heroically.
Yep.
And that game was really who had the ball last, and Kareem Hunt, you mentioned him earlier, had a hell of a game. He was scoring left and right, and so I'd say under for the Ravens, just because I think all the teams are going to be battling it out, and I'm going to give Cleveland a little bit more props. Obviously, I'm a fan of my own team, but I think that all these teams are going to really be butting heads this year. I think it's a real strong division. Even and Pittsburgh traditionally never has a bad year. They've never been really sub 500.
Correct.
So yeah.
And to your point here, Bengals over under 10.5 wins.
Yeah.
Well, I thought
so I'm going to go over
11.
on that.
So it started at 11.5 and went to 10.5 after the Joe Burrow injury.
Yeah, I'd take it over. I'm taking it over. Yeah, I did a season prediction yesterday or the day before, and I can give you that information here in a minute as far as with that and with Cincinnati and Cleveland, because I think they end the season playing one another. So they start the season and they end the season with the Bengals, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So they have the Cleveland Browns at 9.5.
Yes. I'm going over.
All right.
Yeah, I'm going to go over. My season prediction has the Browns going 11-6. That was my latest take. 10-7, 11-6. Tony Grossi, who's a beat writer here in Cleveland for years, he put him at 9-8 today. That was his prediction. You look at the Browns' schedule over the last 2 years. Look at the games. I know there were at least 3 games. We all say the what ifs.
Mm-hmm.
That Jets game, there's no way in hell that they should have lost the game. The fact that they did is just embarrassing. There was a loss to the Atlanta Falcons where they kind of got control of the game a little bit. But then the Falcons ran all over them, over our defense. Then that game, the San Diego or the Chargers game in Cleveland last year, had a couple opportunities to win that game and lost. So it's a very fine line, but I think that I went with 11-6, 10-7. So if the over and under is what, 9.5, you said?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also, just so you know, 2 of the 3 that you took over,
Yeah.
I laid bets on
Oh,
for entertainment purposes only.
yes.
No, I'm kidding. I live in a completely legal state to gamble.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, I took the Steelers and I took the Bengals.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that.
I just because, you know, when it dropped with Burrow and I've had that calf strain, I know what it's like. I expect him to be okay. And then the other part was, you know, the guy's coached since 2007, and he's always finished 500 or better.
Yeah.
So in order to do that, he's got to win 9 games. So
yeah,
I'm betting Tomlin on that. Historically, I'm right. If I lose this year, am I really that upset if I lose and the Steelers go below 500?
Right.
Probably not. I'm probably money that'll make me laugh. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Justin, I'm gonna give you the same here, and we'll run through these real quick. So we'll start 8.5 games for the Steelers. What do you think?
I'll go over. I see him at 8. I see him at 9, 7, and 1. I'll give him a tie.
That's an interesting. I tried to pick him for a tie last year, and I almost got it with us. What about 9.5 games for the Cleveland Browns?
John, you're not gonna like me on this because I do agree a little bit with Tony Grossi. Even though he said 9 and 8, I'm going to reverse those numbers and go 8 and 9. And the only reason for is that because it's basically because of I'm not sure where to put Deshaun Watson in this offense consistently. Right. Like it's almost like I need to see it first in order to believe it. That's how I feel when it comes to him. I felt like the offense ran smoother, even though you had your problems with them. But when Baker Mayfield took the field, in that offense, running it off, Kevin Stefanski's run first offense, he played better. Like it felt more fluid because we knew it ran through Nick Chubb. Well, it feels like early on that while they like that, they want to abandon that because they want so desperately to compete with the Mahomes and the Allens and the Burrows of the world and then the Lamars. So I can see them going 11 wins too, believe it or not, obviously.
See, I agree with you, Justin. I think that I think the Browns are forcing the issue again. And this is where there's a big divide amongst analysts.
It feels much. And then obviously I'm going a little bit longer with the Browns talk since you are our guest today. And it feels like while there are plenty of pieces there, it feels like the reverse of the famous Sigmund Freud theory. If anybody knows sociology or psychology, is that the greater unit as a whole is better than the individual sum of its parts. We know that the Cleveland Browns have really good individual sum parts. We already know what Myles Garrett is. We know what Denzel Ward is. I like the secondary as a whole, more specifically, even with Juan Thorhill instead of John Johnson III. On offense, you mentioned the 3 receivers. They got a nice little trio there too with Amari Cooper, Peoples-Jones, and everybody said the buzz about Elijah Moore. I'm personally high on David Njoku because I feel like that he never really had the production since he got drafted in 2017. And if we go back to one of our previous episodes when we were doing fantasy tight ends, I actually picked him as my 4th fantasy tight end. So that's a hot take and it's a bold take, but I know what I've seen from him athletically. So there's pieces there. But the question that I'll have, and I don't know if it'll be answered week 1's, first of all, is if Deshaun Watson can answer and put those pieces together to make it a lethal offense. I think that there's just too much banking on that, but I do see 8 wins at least. So I'm going to stick with that as the safe zone, but I can easily see.
Then the question is, the question then in Cleveland, and we've had this discussion on our network, is if they go 8 and 9 again, or 7 and 10, they're winning. The games are close. Stefanski, let's say he stays,
Mhm.
or they keep him. But then what are you doing with these other guys like Miles, like Nick Chubb? I mean, we're looking at contracts. We're talking,
Right.
we've invested all this time and money and energy. What's going to happen then? So that's kind of our conversation. Yeah.
I think I may have a response, and it might be one that may not be as popular, but you already know that the Deshaun Watson contract was not a good contract, even though by league standards it was
Mhm.
fully guaranteed. Obviously, if you compare it to his contemporaries now on
Mm.
annual year average, doesn't look that
Mhm.
bad when it comes to the cap
Mhm.
hit. But they've already restructured that contract a couple of times, so future years is going to get like $60 million on
Right.
the next couple of years. But I think that if they were to go, let's say 8 and 9, as you said, finish third or
Yeah.
fourth in division, something like that, they're going to be forced to make a hard decision to either trade Nick Chubb and get draft capital because they still
Mhm.
are strung out on draft capital from trading picks away to reload this
Mhm.
roster and
Mhm.
next year too, or you trade Deshaun Watson. And I think everybody's going to lean towards trade Nick Chubb because you can always get another running back, as everybody like to
Mhm.
say, but they're using that sort of
Yeah.
pontification as if Nick Chubb is not one of the best running backs in the league already. Like
Mhm.
you're not going to just pluck
I
him
don't
out
know
of the
the
sky.
fan base. I'll tell you that the whole Nick Chubb conversation, that's going to be a huge topic here because
It's
you're
going to
what
be an interesting one.
what
Yeah.
what's happening now is you're getting into that realm of he's going to pass the other two guys in Cleveland history for running backs, and will only be beside Jim Brown by the end of the
Yeah.
season. And he took a really nice team deal a few years ago.
He did.
Some
I
folks are
remember.
hoping that maybe that he could do that would be a nice little perk or do something like that now or soon or even
Mhm.
first part of the season. We'll see, but that's a real big talking point over the next season.
Here's
John,
also
I
another
want to I want to bust some myths real quick. Justin said he's talking a little bit longer because it's the Browns are here. We're talking about the
Yeah.
Browns.
Yeah.
Him and I always go over our allotted time, no matter what. We're both windbags, so don't buy
Yes.
that. Don't
Yes.
buy that.
Not a problem. Well, if you can join us, Justin, I'm going to send you an invite for tomorrow with our guys because we have our Fanatical Elf show on
Okay.
Thursday. So that would be nice to have you because we got a couple guys that like to go a little bit extra long too in their chatter.
Little banter, little banter.
I'll be honored. I'll be honored to join you guys.
Okay.
The
All
one
right.
last thing I was going to bring up was I think what can rescue the Browns out of that Deshaun Watson deal, futuristically speaking, Dorian Thompson Robinson, DTR. I think he has
Good point. Yeah.
something good. Yeah, I think he has
Oh
something
yeah,
good there.
yeah. I think
He
that's a really absolutely.
All
he
right.
He,
can become that steal, that signature steal. Man, I think it helps
he
Cleveland
had 4
tremendously.
quality years at UCLA. He's coming in with a whole bunch of confidence, and you can just see it. He's got some relationships with
Yeah.
Cedric Tillman, some guys that he played high school ball with. There's some good things going on. That was one of the bigger surprises this with the training camp. I think they gave up on Josh. They knew that they could get something now with this rookie, and they sent Josh Dobbs over to Arizona, and
Which he's a starter now in week 1.
yeah,
Starter
and you
has
think
popped
about it, they
out.
brought Josh Dobbs back. That's Cleveland. That was in kind of and they guaranteed him. We talk about guaranteed money. Obviously, it was like $2 million or something, but still, they sent him over to Arizona, and because they do trust this new kid from UCLA. Yep,
All right.
DTR.
We're running up against the wall. Ratbirds,
Yes.
10.5. 10.5 wins for the Ratbirds.
I'm going to go under because I have them at exactly 10 wins.
Perfect. You got that extra half. All right. Cincinnati Bengals, 10.5 wins.
Definitely, I'm going to go over. I think the Bengals are going to be jockeying with other powerhouses for the number 1 seed, and I think they're going to obviously make the run through the jungle. Literally, the title of the show when it comes playoff time. That's the best I see happening for us.
I hope you're right. So I think 3 teams in the AFC North are going to win 10 games or more. I could see 3 of us getting in. I could also see that the AFC East. I think one of us is going to get 3 teams in because the South is only getting 1 in my mind. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's going to happen. So it's going to be interesting to see where that comes down. Now that means that my prediction, I'm going to be wrong on one of the 2 because I feel like that 9.5, I feel like that's a really good number for the Browns. I think they're 9-8, 10-7. I think they've made improvements.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Would I be shocked if they go 11-6, John? I would not.
Yeah, that's
So-
opportunistic, but
Yeah. So
they-
it's interesting. So I know someone in our division is going to lose some heartbreaker games.
yeah.
It's just going to happen. It's who probably stays the healthiest is not going to be in that position. So we got our season predictions out of the book. Here's the hot seat, John.
Mhm.
The dust settles Sunday afternoon around 4:00.
Yes.
What do you have the score for the Cleveland Browns Cincinnati Bengals game?
I'm going 27 Browns, 26 Bengals.
Hey
27,
now.
26.
So we've got the over and the Browns winning and covering.
What's
All
the cut? What's the? It's 40.
47.5, 2.5.
I saw that.
is the line.
Yeah. I'll take that over. Yep. Let's go 27, 26.
Mr. Lacey, I know you're not going to agree with that. Go ahead. There you go, flexing fingers here.
Yeah.
For those of
you
you,
know,
we're stretching. If you're out there on Spotify or Apple, thank you. Hit that follow, like, subscribe, download, share with some friends.
maybe
All
I'm
right, we're
just
done
being
stretching.
very
Go.
maybe I'm just very cautiously optimistic. I mean, like I'm overly cautious about the Bengals. I think that the reason why the spread is where it is at 2.5 is because they're basing it off of the history of the Browns having the Bengals number, supposed to say. But I do take a lot of credence to what Joe Burrow was able to do figuring out that Browns defense, even though it was Joe Woods, but he still struggled against that same defense and that personnel. And I think he understands the hurdle is there, that the whole notion that he hasn't won in Cleveland yet. Do we expect Joe Burrow to always lose when he goes into Cleveland? We're talking about top 2 quarterback in the NFL, on track to having a Hall of Fame level career. And this is obviously no shade to the Browns, but this is not going to be one of those things where he's going to keep losing it on the road in the Browns stadium. Get it out the way, get that hurdle out the way. I think the Bengals win. I think that they do cover the 2.5 spread. And I think that the score prediction would probably be, I'm going to give DeShaun a few touchdowns as well, too. I think there's going to be like a nice medium to high score range, 33-24, 33-23. That's where I'll go with.
All right. I've been back and forth on this. I'm going to stick with my original thought. I'm going to take the Bengals in a close one, 24-20. I think we're going to see just under on the under, even though I think both these teams have a lot of firepower. I think first game of the season, a little cautious with the calf injury. I think our offensive line can actually run the ball a little bit better this year. I expect us to. So I think we're going to run some clock. But I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be a good game. It's going to be an AFC North game. And there's not a lot of them that are blowouts. Every once in a while, we had that a couple years ago. We had that a blowout with the Steelers that I still fondly remember. But
yes,
that's the one I've got. Now, I will say thank you to everybody who's listening. Thank you for everybody who subscribed. I hope that you guys really enjoy this Strange Love episode. Every week we will have, we're going to try and bring on someone from an opposing team that we are playing, show a little love to our competitors out here. We cannot play this game that we all love with one team. It's ridiculous. So I don't understand why everybody gets so upset about it. Let other people root for whoever they want to. I'm just going to keep rooting for the Bengals.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And John, thank you for joining us for the first episode, man. It was awesome. It was great having you on.
Appreciate the time. And thank you so much. Follow us on the Fanatical Elves Network.
Yeah.
And we're part of the Fans First Sports Network, a great group of guys. And they've our product is growing. I know our downloads are up the last couple of months every day, and we're looking.
Yeah.
And we've got a great group over at our Fanatical Elves contributors. They do a lot of writing for the Browns periodicals like Dog Pound Daily, write for them, Northeast Ohio Sports Insiders. So yeah, come on over. follow us. That'd be great. We'll try to,
Yeah.
we'll follow you guys. And I know Brandon, you guys.
It's always nice to look in on the teams you're playing too, especially AFC North teams. We got to play twice a year.
yeah.
I mean, you ain't
Yeah.
going nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, we cut to the chase. He went through a lot of ins and outs with what to expect against the Browns, and Justin and I on Running Through the Jungle get a little more in depth on some Bengals stuff off the field and some more in depth Bengals coverage that not necessarily affect the score of the game. But yeah. Well, it's great having you, John. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to Strange Love, the inaugural episode. For Justin Lacey and myself, Brandon Herriott. Join us next week as we're Strange Love on Running Through the Jungle.